Ladies and gentlemen, sitting in Moscow's morning traffic jams, heading to one of the shows I'm going to be one of the experts on. Usually Monday mornings on Открытый эфир, open эфир, on channel Zvezda. Come check it out. It starts about 9:20, 9:15, somewhere there. So I'm sitting in the traffic. This is going into Moscow. So, part of what we're going to discuss today, I'm going to discuss in chunks as the day goes along, and I'm going to put this out as one bigger episode of India as a Truth Update. The Ukrainians and their Western enablers, they lie as the day is long. As their heart beats, they lie. So their new propaganda BS is Russia is hitting nuclear substations. Electrical substations, in which the high-powered cables from the electric power plants go into, and they get sectioned off and sent off down the current gets sent off down the line. And it's just banks of really big transformers. Sometimes not that big transformers. It all depends. Speaking of transformers, that's, by the way, one of the reasons repairing the big electrical power plants is very difficult. The big transformers, the really big ones, the ones that are like 2 stories high, they are actually hand designed. They're designed for each electrical power station. So they're not mass produced. They're actually hand produced. And there's only like a couple hundred of them that get produced every year. Now that's in the U.S. and about the same in many in Russia. So worldwide, I think it's like 1,000 a year. These are also used to replace old ones that have reached the end of their lifespan in existing power plants. They just don't age out all that often. So and then any new ones and so on. So replacing all of this is very difficult. I mean, these things are 2 stories high. It takes huge trucks to move them. That's not an endeavor that you just set up. Now the transformer stations, they use smaller transformers. They are mass produced, so they're much easier to replace. But there is no such thing as a nuclear substation. There's nuclear power plants, but not nuclear substations. There are substations from nuclear power plants. And yes, Russia does hit those. On the other hand, it does not hit nuclear power plants, as opposed to Ukraine and its Western backers that have been hitting the Zaporozhye power plant for the last 3 years nonstop. Oftentimes, they actually try to shell the cooling station. Those cooling towers are built to withstand a direct Boeing strike. Boeing 747 flying into them. They're pretty hard to take down, but the Germans were able to take them down, but put enough charges in there, and they took out their last cooling stations because they are now nuclear free, are just buying nuclear power from the French, who are having problems keeping their reactors running, especially since they now have to pay actual market value for uranium, or how much uranium in that ore. It's very minuscule. It's bleached out with chemical processes, as opposed to what they were getting when they had their neo-colonial empire still going in the Sakhalin. Life's a bitch. Now you have to actually pay the price. The real market price, not steal from poor people who don't have electricity so you can have electricity. So, yeah. But as I was saying, Ukraine's been shelling that Zaporozhye power plant for 3 years. 3 friggin' years. With American backing, absolute American backing. Let's not BS ourselves. The U.S. and U.K. are fully in charge of the military in Ukraine. The Ukrainian generals are the executioners of orders. They don't plan the orders. So they've been hitting for 3 years. They've been trying to hit the generators, electric generators that power the pumps. They're backup generators, but they're the main things right now because the Zaporozhye power plant is on shutdown standby. It's not fully shut down because reheating these nuclear cores is next to impossible once you've shut them down fully. That's an interesting issue. It takes a while to warm them back up. So they've been trying to hit the electrical generators, the diesel generators that are pumping water to keep the nuclear fuel from overheating, to cause a nuclear meltdown, and then blame it on Russia. Because, according to the West, we bomb ourselves. I mean, come on. The reality is, since 2014, that was the Ukrainian and American and Western in general propaganda thread, that the rebels in eastern Ukraine were the ones shelling their own kids in their kindergartens and schools. I mean, you have to be a pretty low-level intellect, something like about a 70 IQ, to actually believe this crap. Well, apparently there's a lot of 70, 80 IQs running around. There's a lot of people in the West actually believe this crap. I kept repeating it. I mean, talk about low information voter, low IQ information voter. That's why they used to have poll tests before voting. Well, there you go. There you go. All right, folks. We will continue. Cheers. So next theme for today is the Russian healthcare system. It's not only in Russia, this type of dual-track healthcare system. America is, except for immigrants and the very poor, strictly for-profit. Other countries, particularly like England, is basically strictly socialized. And the problem is when you do one strictly or the other, you get a mess. On the one hand, in the UK, women have to wait up to 6 months to go see a therapist, the regular doctor, general practitioner, and then after another 6 months to see a therapist if they find, say, a lump in their breast. And maybe after a year, they may start getting treated for breast cancer, which often is too late. In America, you could go see a doctor pretty quickly, but most of the time you can't afford it. And even the insurance companies are skyrocketing in prices. There was an interesting video of one woman showing her previous bill of $166, and her bill for just her own insurance starting 1st of January was $800. And on my own, experience, I know how that system works. The co-pays, the deductibles, and all the other crap. And then, with a salary that put me in the 6th percentile in Houston from the top, for me and my family, I could only afford really 80% coverage without having to really cut. And this was back before Obamacare came in. So either or, and it's not a good choice. Dual track is a much better choice. On the one hand, you have what's called government insurance, which basically, it's not insurance in the way you think of insurance. It's government medical plans. So what that means is you can go as a citizen, as a legal resident. Not a visa, but an actual residency. You are covered. You go to a medical clinic. Some of them are extremely excellent. Some of them, depending where you're at, are less than excellent, and some are subpar. Depends where you are. I mean, I'm not gonna say everything's great. And you get in the line and you go see a doctor. For some things, it's very quick. For other things, it's a wait. And you go do that. Or you can go to a private medical clinic, whether you pay out of pocket or is secondary insurance. You can buy the secondary insurance yourself. Some employers provide secondary insurance. But honestly speaking, this is if you're buying it for yourself. If you're a relatively healthy person, there's no point in buying that secondary insurance, because even if you go to the medical clinics and pay out of pocket, you won't go over what that medical insurance, that supplementary medical insurance would cost you. It's cheaper to pay out of pocket. There, usually you don't have to wait. So there's that. See, And because the government medical system provides a serious competition to the private medical sector, the private medical sector can't spike prices very high. I mean, they make a profit, obviously. They wouldn't be in business if they didn't. But they don't spike them like in the U.S. because they go out of business very quickly. They have to have a clientele. And so they have to have a offer of better quality service at a reasonable price to be competitive. There are other advantages, obviously. I'll give you an example. On the one side, I had hemorrhoids removed. And welcome to the Army. You get them from the food you eat, which is made to stuff you up with additives and other things. But anyways, I could have gone through the medical system, the free medical system. I went instead by a paid. It would have been a longer wait because there was a line for colonoscopy and for that. And I would have been, would have had to spend a week in the hospital because that's their standard. As opposed to the paid medical, which I got right in, and it was in-out surgery, and I was home that evening. I mean, unlike America's in-out, where they wake you up before you even get off the anesthetic, and they force you into a wheelchair and drive you out, get the hell out. I stayed in a separate room till I was recovered enough to go, and that was like for 5 or 6 hours until I was up on my feet and the anesthetic passed and everything else. There's no hurrying you, and they feed you too while you're sitting there. They bring you some food in, things like that. So yeah. And including the colonoscopies, the checkups, and the surgery, the anesthetic, and everything else, I paid out of pocket $1,500, which made it reasonable enough for me to pay because I wouldn't have to lose a week of laying in a hospital, plus waiting a lot longer to get through all of this. On the other hand, I have a friend of mine, 42 years old. He was smoking for most of his teenager and adult life. Had lung cancer. He went on a checkup, and they caught it on a checkup. They caught it in time. They amputated half of one lung, but his body wasn't healing properly. He wound up getting an infection in that lung. They had to they treated him for that infection. Eventually, they had to amputate the whole lung because there's a hole that formed in it, bacterial infection. Even though he was on antibiotics and everything like that. Thank God, with one lung, he is on his feet. Went home. He spent 5 months in the hospital. This is a government hospital. He spent 5 months in the hospital, and he went home. I can't say he's super healthy. He's recovering. It's going to be a while for recovery, about a year. And then, of course, with one lung, he is going to be much more limited. He's not smoking anymore. But he paid nothing out of pocket. In the U.S., for something like this, half a year in the hospital, etc., he would have been bankrupted by now. Because more than likely, the insurance company would have tried to refuse payments. He would have gone over whatever limits they set for his insurance. And he would have been bankrupt. His family would have been bankrupt. In Russia, he left with nothing out of pocket. So, there's that. Food for thought, food to consider. By the way, because Russia has a socialist track, the government track, the government this what they call a vaccine for cancer. It's not a vaccine for cancer. It's a very bad choice of words. What they do is they create a protein-based injection that's based on the proteins of each particular cancer. And what they do is they amplify that protein and then inject it back into the cancer. What it does is it lights up a signal to the immune system. Here I am. Come get me. Because cancers form because either a human immune system is weak, which is why old people and small children are the ones that mostly suffer from cancer, or because the mutation is so slight that the body doesn't notice it. Well, this goes in parallel with immune boosters, so to get the immune system up and running harder and faster. And they do this for people in third, fourth stage of cancer. Right now, human trials are in progress. They've been since September. So lab final trials are in process. And it's been said that's shown extremely good results. And the government is going to do, because the government funded this project, the government funded everything in this. These shots, this treatment is going to be free for the citizens, and for foreigners, it's going to be like $10,000 or $12,000, somewhere around there. And the reason for the government to do this is it saves money, because the government's not in the business of making money off of cancer treatment. Quite the opposite. It loses money on having to treat people with cancer. So it's in its interest to make sure people, A, don't get cancer, and B, when they do get cancer, it can be treated effectively and cured, thus saving the government a lot of money. There you go. That's food for thought. So, here's the triumvirate of our themes for today. MI6, which has long gone off the deep end. They really, really want to start World War III to an incredible amount. We're not even talking insanity of CIA. We're talking insanity of CIA for a schizophrenic paranoiac on heavy medication or drug use. That level. So they came up with this plot that they were going to bribe a Russian pilot of a MiG armed with a Kinjal missile, hypersonic missile, to fly into Romania so that they could have an incident. And then, of course, whether or not the survivability of that pilot to ever collect the money that they were promising was a big question, because the question then becomes, are they out after the Kinjal missile and the plane, or are they ready to shoot it down? And then comes leaked information from the Romanian Ministry of Defense that there were 2 F-16s flown in, weapons clear, and be ready to intercept. So intercept, obviously, is going to be this MiG. So MI6, one thing you can say about the British is they're cheap. Oh my God! So they were offering this pilot $1 million. $1 million for basically a suicide mission. And when they couldn't do that, they started offering $3 million. $1 million, or euro, I'm sorry, euro. A little bit more than $1 million. Live freely and carefree in Europe after this with a passport. Well, first of all, as far as betraying Russia and living free and carefree and whatever, there was already a pilot who murdered his crew, landed his helicopter and gave it over to his Mi-8 and gave it over to the Ukrainians. He got money. Yeah, he was living up in Spain for a couple months until he got brought. He had his meeting with Jesus all of a sudden. That's called payback. So even if somebody's inclined to do something like this, and betrayal like this, they were going to think twice, if not 3, 4, 5, 10 times. And when they couldn't get the pilot, they were trying to talk the navigator in, by the navigator. These guys, by the way it's known is because they came out to the FSB, told them what was happening. And this is the first time, by the way. Told them what was happening and gave up all the information. And then they were playing the British until they got more information. This has been used several times, actually, to destroy Ukrainian forces. Because there were Ukrainian and the MI6 guys that were supposed to meet a fighter pilot that was supposed to land his plane on a secret air base or airstrip. The plane didn't come, but the glide bombs did. And that happened about a year ago. So here we go again. MI6 trying to hire a pilot, bribe him to turn on his country and live a carefree life. If they're not planning to just shoot them down in the first place. It looks like that's exactly what they were planning. All this to create an international incident of this one lone MiG with a Kinjal flying into Romania to do something. Which in itself is idiotic, because if you think about it, the MiGs don't fly in that direction. At the most, they're coming up over Crimea. Most of them don't have to fly over enemy airspace anymore. They launch their payload well over Russian airspace and within the Russian anti-air umbrella. Release, and come back, reload, fly up, release, and so on and so on. If one suddenly takes off over the Black Sea toward Romania, I mean, that's not a 2-minute flight. That's not a 5-minute flight. That would be an obvious to ground control that somebody's gone rogue. Especially with a Kinjal. The Kinjal is a cruise missile. It's a medium-range cruise missile. You don't have to fire it from anywhere near the target. Especially when the target's in Ukraine. There's no part of Ukraine so far away that you can't fire the Kinjal within Russian controlled airspace. So this is MI6 on absolute heavy narcotics, trying to start World War III. Trying to make an incident to pull in all the other European nations that don't want to fight, because the majority of them don't want to fight. Macron needs to fight to cover up the dead French lying all over Ukraine, and cover up his pathetic ratings. Starmer, the most unpopular prime minister in the history of the UK, or at least since they've started taking statistics. Merz, who the vast majority of Germans have finally figured out that he is not their friend. His popularity is collapsing. And then the rest of the various scum and the smaller nations like Brussels, Italy, Maloney, who just betrayed her own people for another million refugees that are coming in from every God only knows where. All these people are not the friends of their people. And the majority of their population started to figure that out. Yeah, it's taking a lot of them quite a while to figure it out. But they finally started to figure it out. So, yeah, so there's that. Yeah, food for thought. I said today was short, relatively, 3-piece. But that's something that the British have been trying very, very hard to create a big incident, including shelling a nuclear power station in Zaporozhye, doing anything they can to make a catastrophe and make Europe as a continent bleed out. And hope. Well, their of course plan is to stay out of it, just like it was to stay out of World War I and stay out of World War II. Didn't quite work out that way, did it? Now, cost them their whole empire. But they don't learn. Unfortunately, they do not learn. So that's what we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah. Well, bring the truth. That's about all we can do right now. Combat this evil. Okay, so support by all means, please. Like, subscribe, share, and God bless. Cheers.